lot of things. You come in a moment, incidentally, where I have already resolved one by one, in coming to a position. People suggest that I may be an advisor of the insurgent.
Discrimination, that is what is at the heart of the protests that are taking place in Delhi today. Welcome to the 4th episode of Correspondence, and what we're going to be talking about today is a forgotten corner of India, the Northeast. We're very fortunate to have 3 people with us today. Of course, you'll all recognize Kunal Majumder. He's written and reported from the Northeast quite extensively. But our 2 special guests today, of course, we have Dr. Akoijam. He is a professor in JNU and he teaches at the Center for Study of Social Systems. But at the heart of it, he's a filmmaker and of course has worked extensively on human rights issues. Now, sitting by my left here, we have a young PhD student who is studying in Jamia, and her name is Achi, and you guys will be sharing with us your experiences. Just to start things off, I mean, given what's been happening over this last 1 week in New Delhi, I just wanted to ask you first. Being from Northeast, you spent 11 years in New Delhi right now.
Yeah.
Have you ever faced any form of discrimination at any time in your 11 years?
From the moment we step out from room, it starts, but sometimes it's too silly to mention that it's discrimination, but we are suffering a kind of discrimination which we cannot mention or we cannot take up as issue, like when you're standing in a bus stand or auto stand, someone murmuring from your behind, like Nepali, Chinky, those things. And sometimes your own classmate, like I have experienced during my MA, like studying master in political science, like my classmate just spoke out in the class like, Achi, is it Mizoram and this thing, Manipur, is it in India? It's included in India? So how much it hurt, being Indian. Sometimes it makes me ask a question to myself that what's my citizenship?
One thing we can begin with what she has just said. Discrimination could be quite obvious and very glaring, you can see it, or people calling it, but there is a constant sense of being misrecognized, you not being recognized. I think it comes from the basic conception of what India is all about. Let's accept it. When you say South Asia, in America or in Western countries, you mean a particular kind of a look, a particular kind of a culture, and whereby these people in the Northeast is excluded. They're not part of South Asia, they are part of Southeast Asia. And it's that particular look, particular idea of what India is, in general, whether you like it or not, whether it is politically incorrect or not. It's a fact. And you can see that this is exactly what is get reinforced when some people like even Mani Sankaraya, for example, many people did say this, that Southeast Asia began from India's Northeast. You see, that's a marker of a particular kind of a notion of India. So that is what I'm trying to suggest is it is at the root of what India is, the very imagination, very idea of India. What she said is that at the core of it, some certain kind of gaze, constantly you sense it, but you may not be able to explicitly articulate it, what is it. And sometimes we can go to a very gross example of what is happening in the last couple of days in the case of this girl's death. And what surprises me is, I know this, you're from media, so I can tell you this once, Tehelka may be a little different, but you have box, you said unanswered questions. Door was broken and bolted from inside. Police had to break it, but there is also report. The same report says that there was a door which was open. There was a ventilation. Is it possible people to come into ventilation? What happened to the other door? Did you pick up the evidences or secure the site of the crime? Unanswered questions. There was a phone call. What was the last person she talked to?
Yeah.
What is the nature of the body and blood? Is it anti-mortem or is it a post-mortem blood? And the report has come inconclusive. Twice it has to be done.
Yeah.
All these procedural, the criminal procedures of what police could have done on the crime site, to the way media reports, and they would do their own stories. But right now they are doing it Northeastern people complaining, rather than they picking up it and pointing out some of these issues.
You've been in Delhi for quite some time.
More than 2 decades.
2 decades now. Was this discrimination always there? Because we know at one point even South Indians, for example, faced huge discrimination in other parts. Madrasis anybody who was down the Vindhyas were called Madrasis, which has to an extent eased over the years. Has this discrimination against northeastern people always been there? Of course, the population was less at that point.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
I think one is this: the South Indian problem is more or less the same. The India is driven by Indo-Gangetic narrative, right from the Aryan arrivals, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, to how it pushes down the Indo-Gangetic. When Vindhyas become the block, how it covers. So that the narrative goes on. So there is certain ways where the Indianness is primarily defined by a particular geographical or cultural narrative of a particular region. And that's how the South Indian went through that kind of experience. There's Dravidian versus the Indo-Aryan sort of thing, which is a narrative structures by historiographer, the anthropologists, and so on. You had the movement of Dravistans in the 50s in the South. So there is this gap. So it has something to do with the idea of India itself there also, at one level, right? So it requires us to prepare to deal with the issues rather than neglect it and push it and encourage it by a systematic failure to respond to these challenges. Exactly what I feel sad precisely because of that. This particular incident has given me that kind of a sense that we are not getting ready to respond. You will get more and more. So it's not that there wasn't there before, it was there. I came out in the 80s from my home state. I faced the same kind of thing about people calling me from this place or that place, people behaving towards me differently. As a young man, you even fought. I mean, that's okay, but now you can't afford. But what I say is it happens at very subtle levels within even the educated circles, sort of middle class people, particular prejudices. So it's there. It's always been there, only it's become more visible and it will become more frequency will become more and more because people are not going to lie down also, people are going to protest.
Yeah.
They don't think Delhi is alien as such also at one level. Many of the Northerners feel that just a Gujarati or a Marathi would feel in Delhi that this is India, this is my place. This assertion is going to be